Hey, noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Protectorate and get ready for the new stage of our wonderful nostalgia journey. If, like me, you were a teenager in the 90s, there is one console that you absolutely spent some time with, and that is the wonderful Super Nintendo. I mean, look at this. Look at this one. It's a Street Fighter bundle. I know what you're thinking, but Metatron, my Super Nintendo didn't look like that because that's not the American one, that's the European PAL version. Oh, I know. So, how about we talk about these two? Also, let me know which one you think looks better. Starting our lineup with a boxed European Super Nintendo version. And here we've got the American boxed version. Now, of course, I understand that not all boxes look the same. For instance, here I've got a Star Wing Super Nintendo bundle. That would have been Star Fox in the US, by the way. Anyways, these are the boxes we have to work with, and so I'm just going to put them one next to the other. So, first and foremost, I have to say that even when it comes to the image on the box, they really look so different in terms of PR and marketing theory. But I'm not going to go too into the details of this because at the end of the day, yeah, looking at the boxes is really nice. But what we're interested in is actually looking at the content. And let's lay it all on the table for display. So first and foremost, in this case, look at the controller already. We'll get back to that. And of course, we get the game, the Super Nintendo proper, and a bunch of cables that we're not really going to go into for this video. When it comes to the American bundle, of course, the cartridges look different, and I'll have to make a dedicated video. For now, we'll just show them off. We get the console proper, and you can see clearly that the controller looks different. Putting the consoles one next to the other, you see that the PR strategy is completely different. The Super Nintendo in America was redesigned in order to not be perceived as a toy, if you will. In other words, rather than just appealing to kids, Nintendo of America wanted to get a new line of customers from, for instance, teenagers and perhaps even adults. Thus, the smooth, rounded edges of the European version, which mimics the original Japanese, are replaced with pointy, squared looks. And the four-colored symbol, reminiscent of Toys R Us, is replaced with instead the brand name Nintendo. The cartridge slot is of course designed around the size and shape of the cartridges, and power has a switch, eject button in the middle, and a reset button on the right. Compared to the American Super Nintendo, which of course now has a square slot for cartridges. That's now the shape of the cartridges, and both power and reset don't use switches nor buttons, but what could be described as a slide switch instead. I actually like the purple color. With a little imagination, when we look at them from the sides, the European one kinda looks like one of those F-Zero machines, while the American one reminds me of a battle tank. Once again, smooth lines versus squared edges. The back of the European one has a big grid for air ventilation, and these are the three connectors, while the American one, believe it or not, has a smaller grid for ventilation, very similar connectors. When it comes to the controllers, I have to be honest, I prefer the European one 10 times better. Not necessarily for the plastic color, although then again my European one has yellowed, in period it would have been more on the grey side, but because of the beautiful green, blue, yellow, red colors, which I think make it very distinctive. The American one with the only two different hues of purple, it's interesting as a collector's item, but to me the European colors are superior. European cartridge shape, American cartridge shape. Now, clearly, this is a nostalgia project, and whenever we do these, even though I can try to be as unbiased as possible, I mean, personal memories and what we connect to those memories is really the driving force. Personally, for me, the PAL Super Nintendo is the best one. I think it looks better, and I do understand that some of that is not only personal preference, but the fact that I was indeed the target audience of this kind of marketing. So at the end of the day, this was designed for the likes of me, but on the other hand, if you were an American in the 1990s and perhaps you were presented with the American Super Nintendo, clearly that was designed for you. So if you find it more aesthetically pleasing, then it makes sense, that's what you like. Alright, so now it's time to relive the experience. So we're gonna pick up some software. For this test I decided to get Aladdin for Super Nintendo, awesome game, and here is the experience of adding the cartridge to the European Super Nintendo and turning it on. Also, you probably don't need to see this, but here's what it looks like from the top. Love the sound. Instead, here is the experience for the American one. And you can clearly see, I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, okay, it's up. This way. Great. But one thing I noticed, particularly when it comes to Europeans, is that we tend to sometimes snob the American look of the Super Nintendo, thinking that it's ugly. I disagree with that. I don't think it's ugly. I never, in fact, thought that it was ugly. I always thought that the European one looked better, also because at the end of the day, it looks pretty almost identical to the Japanese original, the only difference being that you do actually have things written in English on it. But I also think the reason is that I just like the colors, I just like the way it looks. But I don't think the one in America looks bad, like at all. And I believe that removing the rivalry for a moment, which I don't even know why we have, since at the end of the day we all enjoy similar hobbies. So I think there's no need to be regional about it. And right now, I mean, I live in America anyways, so I do think that in the 1990s, if you hadn't told me, oh, this is the American version, they changed it, and so then I would be defensive about it, because that's what it is. I'd be like, but why did they change it? It looks great. So if you remove that, and you told me, hey, this is a new American console from Nintendo of America, but I don't know that it's the same, I think I would have thought, wow, that looks cool, let me try it, what do you have? So that's the thing. Probably rather than being the actual aesthetics of the looks of the Super Nintendo proper, I find it very nice. I think it's the cartridges that really look so different to me that I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the way they look in the American version. And in fact, it's not even the shape. I think it's the color. It's the fact that it's the hue of gray that they went for. I always liked the light gray that it's normally connected to the Super Nintendo. So that's probably the reason why I'm not a huge fan of those. But then again, we might need to have a dedicated episode onto the differences between the cartridges and the history behind it, and maybe a little comparison between also the labels, because when we look at the cartridges, we look at the shape, but never really go into the other details that make them different. But I'll make a dedicated video for that. For this one, I'm just trying to be fair. I think the Super Nintendo looks better, at least from my personal taste, but I do understand it's subjective, and when I look at it objectively, I have to say that the American one looks pretty damn cool as well. Alright, but I hope that you enjoyed this little retrospective, and if you like these videos, this is episode 2 if you will, I will continue. We could do again, one dedicated to the cartridges, one dedicated to the boxes, and we can have one dedicated to like Genesis or Mega Drive versus Super Nintendo. I love that kind of content. I imagine that there are a lot of other channels that are better than me at doing that, but then again, maybe I can provide a different perspective, a personal, in fact, look into all of these systems that I've enjoyed when I was younger, and statistically, so have you. But for today, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you for the next upload. Bye. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.